Welcome to I Guess I'll Do It with Pat House. I am Pat House, and on this podcast I will talk to mostly comedians, but probably some musicians and other creative people as well about their early influences, what got them to where they are today, and when they had their I Guess I'll Do It moment where they decided to dive into their creative endeavor. So thank you for listening, and here we go. All right, welcome to I Guess I'll Do It with Pat House. My guest this episode is Ted Alexandro. His new special, Cut Up, and his podcast, The Ted Alexandro Show, are both on YouTube. Ted, thank you so much for being here.
Pat, my pleasure, buddy. Thanks for having me.
Dude, so happy to have you. And I got to say, I'm not just saying this to jerk you off here. You were one of my favorite comics before I even started doing stand-up. Because right before I got into it, I was in high school and I was obsessed with Comedy Central Presents. And I watched like everybody's. And me and my cousin were obsessed with yours. And to this day, we still quote a bagel and a grape. We always go back and forth with that to this day. So we went and saw you at Helium. You were one of the first comics to come through there the summer they opened. And they didn't even have a liquor license yet. It was BYO. I wasn't 21. But you did bagel and a grape, and me and my cousin were hitting each other under the table out of excitement, like we were watching, Skinner play Freebird or something. Like you were doing our bit for us.
Oh, man. Yeah, I remember all of that. Years later.
Oh, that was crazy because Helium was probably only 2, maybe 3 months old, and they were getting off the ground, but there was no liquor license. Every crowd for months had like 30 people max at every show. But I got to see you and a ton of other cool comics in this brand new club. It was such an intimate atmosphere because word wasn't fully out yet.
That's true. That's true, man. Well, first of all, thanks for those kind words. That's a lot of fun to hear. Yeah, man. I remember, first off, the Comedy Central Presents. I remember doing those and how fun those were. And at that point, I was so young. Maybe 5 years, 6 years into stand-up the first time I did a Presents, and then a few years later, 8 or 9 years in when I did the second one. So, you're kind of naive and just thinking like, that's the way it goes. 2.5 hours, just banging it out, But, they shoot them at the Hudson Theater in Manhattan, and it's just fun, So, I was lucky enough to do 2 of those, and it is cool that it resonates with people, and people, it's often that I hear that kind of thing where people are like, oh man, I was in high school, I was in junior high, whatever, and Comedy Central ran the hell out of those things. So
I did. I was obsessed.
Yeah. So that was fun. And I remember, of course, Helium too. I have a vivid memory of that first time playing the club before they had the liquor license. So people were coming in with their 6-pack or their bottles of wine or whatever it was. And it almost felt like it was like an underground, like invitation only, small gathering. It was cool.
Like
There's
a
something fun about
speakeasy.
Yeah, exactly.
Like a speakeasy with comedy. Like you feel like you're doing something you shouldn't because you brought your own 6-pack to a place and the comics on stage, you're cracking your own can of beer open.
Yes.
like a bar gig, but not a bar gig, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, in a weird way, it almost felt classier than a typical comedy club where you just have tables of drunks ordering drinks all night. Like, at least they brought their own shit, and it was something like their favorite brand. It was like it had an element, slightly classier element than typical.
Except for the people who are bringing like Natty Ice and Schlitz, their own.
That's right.
The people who would never buy a $6 beer or $7 beer at a comedy club.
You're always going to have a few of those. Yes.
All right,
I was thinking to myself too, Pat, if I could just jump in.
Oh God, absolutely.
Outside of like my New York, sets and the clubs that I play here, I was thinking to myself, you are probably the guy that I've worked with the most in comedy clubs outside of the New York clubs, like just playing the road, playing Philly, playing New Jersey. You and I have worked together a bunch, man. So I feel like we have a special kinship from working so much over the years.
Absolutely. And you know what? I'm going to dig this up, but I got a picture of us that first weekend at Helium. We are both noticeably 16 years younger, and I bought your first album, As Much As You Want. You signed it, and you said, I hope we get to work together someday. And in the next coming years, we were together, like Helium probably 4 or 5 times. I know we've done the Stress Factory a couple times.
I should have wished for something else, man. If I knew that was going to come true.
But no, you're absolutely right. We have done a ton of gigs together, and you're one of my favorite comics to watch because you were the one I think that got me to act out a joke more. Like whether you were doing like the was it the cab driver bit where it sounded like lawn mowing, or it sounded like
the weed whacker.
Weed whacker, yeah, and you would like hold the weed, use the mic stand as the weed whacker, or whether you're like taking a phone call, or like the gym bit where like ass and back, or I'm fucking up your jokes here, but watching you was like, holy shit, maybe I should actually move around and not just stand there like a statue the whole time.
Well, it's funny.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome. I think two things about that. One is that it's more fun for the audience when you're acting something out, because I tell people, people who are interested and people who ask, I don't just walk around saying this. I say, look, people are watching you for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 45 minutes. They're watching you on a stage. So if you're stationary, that's kind of a tough ask for that period of time. So I think you should use all the tools that you have, access to. So if you can move around, if you can use your body, use your face, change up your tone of voice, these are all things that are going to make for a variance in the person's experience watching you. So that's first. And secondly, it's more fun for you, I think, because you're acting things out. The laughs will usually be bigger if you add some sort of physical or facial accent. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. So I think, it only helps all the way around.
All right, I'm going to relook at my set list for tonight. I have an outdoor show tonight. Now I'm going to see where I can get physical here.
I say go overboard, and then you can always pull it back. Have people asking like, why the hell is he acting out like a pause?
Why is he doing gymnastics? That's weird. Is this a floor routine?
Exactly. Yeah, man. Go all out, and you can always dial back.
Well, you know what? I will. I promise you, I will do something tonight on stage that I haven't done before with some sort of physicality.
Good, man. Good. Yeah, I think
promise to you and the crowd.
I'm gonna check up on that. I'm gonna call the club tonight, and while you're on stage,
but like, what's his body language like? Yeah. Is he squinting?
Right. Has he done that before?
Okay. All right. Well, the whole purpose of this podcast is to go back to the beginning. All of us get into comedy for various reasons and have different angles and influences. So way back when Ted Alexandro was a young, almost up-and-comer, what were some of the things that kind of pointed you in this direction of live stand-up comedy?
For me, I had done a lot of acting in high school, mostly musical theater plays, like all the usual things that people do, like Grease and West Side Story and Godspell and these types of things. And I had done some community theater as well. Like my church had like a summer theater program where you did, basically all these kinds of things, Oklahoma and the Pajama game. So it gave me an opportunity to be on stage, and I just fell in love with all of the things that that encompasses as far as being part of a production and obviously being on stage. And I was musical too. I'd been playing piano since I was a kid. So I liked the musical elements of it as well, singing and all that, dancing. But comedy obviously is very different. So I had the performance chops of being on stage. But like you, I was also a big comedy fan from the time I was a kid. I never really thought like, that's something I can do. It almost felt like, something that like the gods came down and said like, we've chosen you. Like you have to wait. You have to wait for the call to come in. But yeah, so I had done some sketch comedy in college, and I met my friend Hollis James there. And then once we graduated, he and I started doing a two-man act. We went to a lot of the open mics in New York City. We went to like the lottery show at the comic strip. You would have to wait online and do all that stuff. and then do a 5-minute set. So that, to me, that was like a good entrance into like the whole comedy scene and what it was like. And it was cool to have my buddy with me so that we could kind of navigate the whole thing together. So that was kind of my pathway. It started with doing a lot of acting and musical theater, then sketch comedy, then doing the 2-man. And then eventually, you know, I more and more, I realized I was writing stuff more for myself, and I really kind of wanted to explore that. So then I started doing that, like, I guess around 23, 24.
Oh, very so. So, as a duo, were you guys writing like stand-up material, or did you guys have like a back and forth? Like, what was it like when you were sharing the stage at a comedy club as a duo? Like, what was your act like?
Yeah,
with the two of you?
it was interesting because it was really more like little sketches within our set. So if we were doing 5 minutes or 8 minutes, maybe we would pack in like 4, 5, 6 little sketches into that, where we would kind of introduce it. You know, it was a little bit cumbersome, to be honest. Like, it was more, we had come from sketch comedy at college, so we would do like longer sketches in those types of shows. But for stand up, we were doing like, you know, quick hits where we would say like, okay, here's a kangaroo mother and child shopping at a supermarket. And, you know, like, Hollis is shorter than I am, so he would jump into my arms and we would just hop around and be like, okay, we're going to need some bounce, you know, just ridiculous things like that.
Nice play on words there too.
Yeah. So, yeah, it was more like, it was a little bit, I think, clunky because we were kind of shoehorning sketch into stand-up. We weren't doing like a traditional, you know, straight man and that kind of the two defined roles. We were just like doing sketches.
Ah. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Did you or do you have your first set online? I remember you posted a video. I don't even know if it was on MySpace or what, forever ago, but you posted a very, very old set. Was that your first one on stage?
It was, as a matter of fact. Yeah.
Wow.
Because my good friend, my roommate at the time, had, you know, videotaped it, and he still had it like at his parents' house or something like that. And so he sent it to me, you know, like maybe 10 years ago or something like that. But yeah, it is that. And that was even before the duo with Hollis. That was like, I was in college and there was like a talent show at this local community center. And I just decided to write 5 minutes. And that was like literally my first, it was kind of a one-off. It wasn't like, you know, I had been doing it for a while or
Yeah.
It was literally the first time doing stand-up. And yeah, I posted that. It might even be on Facebook, but I'll have to, I'm glad you reminded me. I'll have to dig that up.
Yeah, I should have did that before I did this interview.
No worries, man. No,
I'm mad at myself.
You mentioned
because I had it on my mind yesterday and today when we were discussing doing this, but I fucking didn't think to watch it.
Well, you probably did yourself a favor there.
There's going to be an addendum to this episode. I'll tell you that. We'll have to come back to that. So that 5 that I saw in that set from before the duo, did that 5 go well?
It went well enough that, you know, it didn't kill the dream. You know, it was bizarre though, because like I said, it was a talent show. So I think I went after like some 14-year-old girl who played the piano and sang like a Bette Midler song. Like, you know, did you ever know that you're my hero? And then I go up and try some kind of half-baked comedy premises. I mean, it was fine. Like, people were laughing. It was just, it was a weird dynamic to be doing stand-up.
Yeah, and especially if it's a talent show, you expect raw talent. It wasn't my first. It was probably like, I don't know. I've been on stage 15, 20 times, but at Temple University where I went, they had a talent show that I signed up for, and I followed like, I don't even know the right wording for it. It was like 40 chicks in like a dance step crew.
Right.
And they're like stomping on the stage and clapping their hands. They're all in sync and they're all doing these chants and cheers. And they're like, all right, coming up next, we have Pat House. And I just felt like such a dipshit in every way possible for just being there.
Right. Yeah, I mean, a lot of those early shows, you know, that you do, that's really the lesson, is just following I mean, Hollis and I followed a dog act one time where like some guy had a dog jumping through a hoop and shit like that. So yeah, those early gigs, it's really just about like you can't have any expectations that there's going to be a flow to the show or to your own set or to anything. It's like it's really just kind of staying afloat.
Yeah, and looking back, like, you kind of beat yourself up, but looking back now, 15 years later, I'm like, well, what was I supposed to do? Of course I was going to bomb. I've been on stage 20 times. I followed a dance group.
Right.
Like, how would I think this was going to go well in my mind?
Yes. And a lot of times it's not only a dance troupe, but it's a dance troupe who the whole crowd is there to see. So, like, they're going nuts for them, and then half of them leave when the dance troupe is over, or even in our case, like the dog is killing, and then we go up and have to follow the dog, and we can't.
And then you get into comedy clubs doing open mics, and some first timer brings 50 people. He crushes with dog shit. You're on next, but then he takes all his 50 friends with him because he's done.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it runs the gamut because sometimes you have that scenario that you described, and other times you have the young comic who brings 50 people, but like you kill in front of them because you're good enough, and they're happy to see like a semi-professional comedian, or they're happy to see someone who has some real material. So your experiences definitely run the gamut, so that like sometimes you take those victories of like, oh yeah, I just killed in front of like a room that was stacked for some other comedian.
Yeah, and that feels great as well, because that also keeps you coming, makes you come back,
For sure.
Where was your first club set in New York City?
My first club set, like proper club, I know the first set that I did as a solo was at the Duplex, which was on Christopher Street. They would do comedy in like their upstairs room, and a lot of comedians knew about it.
Yes,
the Stars.
I've done that open mic.
You've done that, right? Yeah. So
yes, I lived in Hoboken in 2011, and that was actually my favorite mic. That was on Wednesdays at like 4 or 5. It was early.
Yeah.
But that always had not just a crowd, but a good crowd. Yeah, I remember that was my favorite open mic to do in New York.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and that was a room that I did a lot in the beginning. But as far as like a comedy club, let me think. It would have to have been either the Comic Strip or Stand Up New York. Those were the two clubs that I was going to a lot, like when I first started solo, and having been part of the duo before that, I at least, kind of knew the terrain a little bit and knew some people. That was one of the benefits, aside from the performing and getting my chops up, just kind of knowing people so that when you walk in the door, you don't feel totally lost. But if I had to guess, I would say Stand Up New York.
Okay, very cool, very cool. I did a couple open mics there, but since I was like in Philly and not in New York much, like it wasn't, I certainly say I wasn't a regular by any means, but I remember doing a handful of sets there and liking the room a lot.
Yeah.
So when you were doing these open mics, who was part of your like class and your crew? Who were you coming up with? Who was just as new as you, starting around the same time?
The people that I vividly remember seeing a lot were guys like Russ Maneve, Ben Bailey, Pete Coriali.
All really funny dudes. All really funny comics. Yeah.
There was a duo, Slovin and Allen, which was Leo Allen and Eric Slovin, and they've both kind of gone on to big like writing careers. But yeah, they were around a lot too. So yeah, those were the folks. I mean, and then there were guys that were like Judah was maybe a year or two. Judah Friedlander was a year or two ahead. Gaffigan was like a few years ahead. So yeah, these were people that you would cross paths with at these open mics.
That's awesome. That's such a great crew to come up with, and you don't really realize it at the time. But that's true. Got to be so cool to look back and think about. You open for Gaffigan, who does 15, 20,000 seaters, and just you don't realize at the time when you're doing a shitty bar gig in Jersey, what's a decade down the line,
No, it's true. It's true. I mean, I played Madison Square Garden with Jim, a few years back, So yeah, I mean, to think that we were playing Hamburger Harry's on 46th Street,
Oh my God, exactly.
yeah, they had this woman Gladys had an open mic in the back of Hamburger Harry's for years. So Jim and I would do that, So we had so much history. Also, I used to have a mail Jeep. That was one of my first cars that I owned, like a postal Jeep. When the postal service switched over to more of those like box trucks.
Yeah,
They phased out the Jeeps. So the Jeeps had like the steering wheel on the right hand side. So I bought one of those for like $700 because a friend of mine told me like, yeah, the postal service is getting rid of their excess Jeeps, and they have like only a couple thousand miles on them because it's all like local stops or whatever. So I went down, like paid $700 cash, got it painted black. And that was my car for like my, college years into like my early to mid 20s. And I remember I drove with Gaffigan. I'm on the right side. He's in the passenger, which is actually, the left side.
exactly.
And we drove to a gig on Long Island, this club called Chuckles, which isn't there anymore. But yeah, like all these memories that you have together, that you build camaraderie and you go through all these kind of battles together. So then, yeah, it is bizarre when you look back and, you're playing Madison Square Garden, 15, 20 years later.
Now, I saw you perform with Jim in Hershey, Pennsylvania a couple years ago. That was the night. Do you remember we're in the car and they have those like orange and white cones that like guide traffic, and you looked at me, you're like, can we run over these things? And I said, I think we can. And you just went over all of them to get in the next lane. I just remembered that right now.
Yeah, that's my driving style, if not my living style.
But I mean, this is such a vague question, I guess, in a way, but what is it like to do comedy in front of 15 or 20,000 people? Because I've opened for like Sebastian Maniscalco, and we did a bunch of gigs with 4,000 and 5,000.
Yeah.
And even sometimes, I mean, it loses a little bit of intimacy, but their laughter lingers and it fucks with like your timing. Mm-hmm. Like, did you find, I mean, you probably found the exact same experience as well, but do you think, what was your experience doing, Madison Square Garden and, arenas?
Yeah. Well, it's like any other gig as you go along. There's a little bit of a learning curve, as you go from open mic to proper club with a real crowd. And then as you go from comedy club to a theater, and then theater to an arena. So all those things, there's a little bit of a learning curve. But obviously, the more you do it, it takes less time to adapt.
You already have a skill set, so you're able to adjust quicker.
Yeah. So I think the things that you mentioned are kind of the things that you have to be aware of, like the laughter. You have to allow them to laugh because it's a bigger space. And also what's key in those arenas is mostly they're watching you on television. They're watching the big screens above you, maybe it's just that lower level that's actually watching your performance live. But, in the upper levels, they're kind of, for the most part, watching the television because it'll zoom in on your face and they get to see it more intimately. So that's the other thing you realize is that, they're seeing everything up close.
The screens definitely help, and it's also weird when you are on stage in that situation, and I still get uncomfortable when I look up and see me on those screens. Like,
right.
I know we get used to shit as our career goes on, but when I'm in that situation and I look up and see me, I'm still just like, ugh, I'm not standing up straight. My shirt doesn't look even. Like in half a second, I can find 10 things wrong, and I know that the image of me is like 20 feet up in the sky, and it's just I've never gotten used to that.
Yeah. You don't want anything that takes you, out of the moment or like puts you in your head, So those peripheral glimpses of, if the big screens are like when we play a theater, sometimes the big screens are to the left and right of the stage, and that can be distracting as well if you just catch it peripherally. So yeah, I mean, I prefer not to even see those because I like to either make some eye contact with the rows that are close enough that I can do that. Or obviously, if it's a really big room, just kind of look out into the abyss. And that's another
in the
thing
abyss. Yep.
That's another thing you learn, is that like you have to kind of really look out there, because even throwing eye contact in that direction, and I, we know this as concert goers or as even comedy goers, when the performer looks in your direction, it's more of a connection, and even at times mentally feels like, oh, they were looking right at me at that, when they sang that song or when they told that joke. So to me, that was another thing that I learned, is to make sure that I'm giving attention to the different parts of the room or the arena in certain cases.
Absolutely. I even to this day, my tactic, I mean, I make eye contact with the first row or two,
Yeah.
But when I'm generally looking out at the room, I look above everybody's heads. I feel like looking above their heads makes them feel like I'm looking at them, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
I could be dead wrong. They could be like, why is he staring at the wall? But in my mind, that's what I think I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah, sure. That works too. I mean, as long as you're not like looking straight up in the sky, you're looking
just like
the direction,
like an emotionless like stalker just hunting out somebody.
Right.
Let me ask you this. So, all right, let's go back to that first set real quick, the one even before the duo.
Yep.
When you started doing stand-up again by yourself on a regular basis, did you keep any of those jokes, or was that first set like one and done, all the material?
If I recall, that was likely one and done. I think there was a joke about like a commercial. There was a perfume called Egoist, and people were like coming out of windows and just yelling Egoist. So I had a joke about that, so it was like, I would never really do a joke about a commercial now for a number of reasons. Like, I don't want to mention a product.
Yeah, absolutely.
And also it's like just ephemeral. It's just like a moment, unless it's like, maybe a Super Bowl commercial, maybe you'll tell it, but either way, it's got a shelf life that's going to be a couple of weeks at most. But when you're writing your first set, none of that enters your mind. You're just like, yeah, Egoist, that's going to be gold.
Oh God, yeah. Oh my God. I mean, at the time when you're brand new, as long as, man, if your first couple jokes hit, you think you're a god, and then even just like a year or two later, you cringe.
Oh,
like if I were to hear my first set, I didn't record my first set. I recorded my second set.
Yeah.
And even just like 2 or 3 years in, all those jokes were so far out the window, and you wonder, you're like, how did crowds laugh at this? Like, I appreciate it,
yes.
And it kept me going and pushed me.
Yes.
But they're terrible.
Yeah,
there might be a gem in there, but the grand scheme of it, like, you're just like, man, these jokes are rough, not funny. I'm wordy. It's a little hacky,
Right.
But you don't know that at the time.
No. And, thank God, comedy crowds, they're there to have a good time. They're drinking in most cases. So, like they're not there with a critic hat on and taking notes and judging you. They're just there for a night out. So it is funny though, when you listen back to sets, from especially early sets, you're like, geez, man, they were being pretty generous.
Yeah. All right. One last random question. Where did you come down to the Philly area before Helium opened? Did you work down here much?
I did that David Brenner room. I forget the name.
Laugh House?
Yeah, I did the Laugh House on a few occasions. One was for like one was like a corporate gig or maybe a college gig for Wharton Business School.
Oh yeah, UPenn. I've done shows for them over the years. It's been a while, but yeah.
Yeah. And then one was just like a show, like when the club was still there. I think somebody got me a gig. And I did a lot of those Andy Scarpati gigs in the area.
The comedy cabarets.
That's right.
Yep. Okay, so you did David Brenner's Laugh House. Okay, yeah. David Brenner sold that to other people, and it became just the Laugh House, and that's where I had my first set. My first 10 times on stage were all in that club.
In the same room?
Yeah. Yep. Same exact room you were in.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. I had never been on stage before, but I was, obviously in the stand-up, never even went to a mic to hang out. I went right to the Laugh House, signed up, and got on that night. It was like done and done.
Isn't it bizarre, man? Like you think it's such a an insurmountable thing. Like, how does anyone even do that? Like, what do you do? How do you sign up? And it's like as simple as like in some cases, it's as simple as like signing your name, and then it's like, all right, you're going up first tonight or whatever, very bizarre.
Yeah, that's so funny you did that room. So there were a lot of cabarets too at the time, I'm sure.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, they were all like kind of around Jersey and Philly area, more like South Jersey, and yeah.
Yep. Oh man, Bucks County, Poco's.
Yeah,
was like a Mexican restaurant. There was Runnymede. There was Northeast Philly. Because I didn't work the cabarets too much, but my first couple of years I got a lot of stage time there, like just guest spots and hosting. But
right.
I didn't work the rooms too often once things got rolling a little bit. But I definitely had help and some good stage time with some good people at those rooms as well.
I mean, I remember they could be rough rooms, they could be like the kind of thing where I can't remember if you had like 3 on or maybe 2 on Friday, 3 on Saturday, that kind of thing in the early going.
The Laugh House did that. I don't know if the cabarets did, but the Laugh House definitely did.
Okay, yeah.
But people were asleep at the midnight show.
Yeah, man. I remember
genuinely sound asleep. Multiple people, midnight show, 12:01. I'm hosting. I can see 4 people who are passed out.
Yeah, it's almost like you weren't doing your job if everyone was awake. Like if you didn't have at least 4 people sleeping, you weren't like truly doing your job. You were almost like the job was to almost be like a lullaby, like get people. They've had a hard week. It's 1:00 in the morning. Like, let's wind them down.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Dude, thank you so much for doing this, man. I appreciate you coming on here. It really means a lot. You've been good to me for all these years, so thank you for helping me out here again.
Anytime, Pat. I always think fondly of you and all the times we've worked together. And I always love reading your stuff on social media too. You're always like so many great stories and so many great lines on Twitter. So thanks for all that stuff too.
Oh, thank you, man. And funny, real quick, you wrote when Greg Giraldo passed 10 years ago. You wrote "Farewell, Maestro," didn't you?
I did. Yeah.
I just submitted something to, do you know Matt Balaker? He's an LA comic. He's put together that Greg Giraldo book.
The book, yeah, of course. Yep.
Yeah, I just submitted a story to him just the other day that he's going to post on the Greg Giraldo tribute website.
Oh, I love it, man.
You should send what you wrote back
to
him.
Actually, the Farewell Maestro, he included in the book.
Oh.
Yeah. Matt reached out to me, I guess... Gosh, maybe was that 5 years ago now, 4 or 5 years ago? Yeah, and he said, "Would you mind if we included that?" So I said, "Of course, man, go for it." So yeah, that's in the. Is it called the Greg Giraldo book? I think it's called the Giraldo book or something.
Greg Giraldo story something.
It's
pretty close to that.
Yeah, I mean, anyone who's worked with Greg has a story. So I'm curious to see yours. Is that going to be? You said that's going to be posted on their site.
He has a website. I forget the exact wording, so I can't exactly plug it correctly here, but it's like a Greg Giraldo tribute site, and he's going to add a bunch of stories and a bunch of fan photos and stuff. And he's kind of compiling all that right now because Greg passed 10 years ago later this month.
Oh, wow.
So he's kind of compiling all those little things right now.
Well, make sure you send me that link when you have it, please. I want to read your story.
Oh, absolutely. Dude, thanks again, man. Make sure you check out Cut Up and the Ted Alexandro Show, both on YouTube. And anything else you would like to plug or share with us before we say goodbye?
No, my friend, that'll do it. I've been saying I'm a retired comedian lately, kind of tongue in cheek, but I'm not doing any Zoom shows. I'm not doing any live shows. The only thing when Pat House calls, I take that call, but otherwise I'm only doing the Ted Alexandro Show on YouTube.
That's the best closer I ever heard. Thank you, for including me in there. Dude, Ted, thank you so much, man. Thank you.
You got it.
I'll talk to you soon.
Yep.